Another quick video, guys. Today's topic is going to be free-to-play ships that people, or at least some people, should invest in, especially the big grinders out there in this game. I know this game has a few of them. So if you guys want to be doing big grinds, here's a list of ships you guys will need. Luckily, most of the commonly used ships in this game for cheap farming and whatnot are USS, so that's very, very lucky. The first set of ships we're going to go over are the Zero Limit Break level 70s. A lot of people use these for cheap farming, like A through B for events, or like you can do 2-1 farming, World 6 farming, Chapter 3-4 farming if you really want to, even Chapter 7 to an extent. Some Zero Limit Break level 70 ships can farm Chapter 7 as well, but that's really pushing it though. After that, it's going to get a lot harder. But the first set of ships we're going to talk about are zombies. Zombies are basically these two girls right here, Cassin and Downs. Now, the reason why these girls are really good, I explained before, is because they have this skill right here. Really good for farming. If you go through multiple sorties, this can have a chance to highly proc, meaning you get 25% HP, and if you dump a lot of repair toolkits like I usually do or something on these ships. So, for example, let me find a ship to take a repair toolkit from. If I can find one, let's take Phoenixes. Like Phoenixes right here. It's gonna be 25% of this, meaning this is probably gonna be about almost 400 HP per sortie. So that's really good heals. Like that's really good. How I usually gear these girls is I don't use this gun. I use the French guns. But if you guys are poor or whatever, you guys can't afford it, using whatever gun you have is perfectly fine, because for the most part, these girls are just there for like cheap farming, so you don't have to be super practical with them. Just a good gun is good torpedoes, and that's pretty much it. Anti-air is like whatever though, but usually that's how I gear this. Cassin's the first one, Downs is the second one, so something like this, and you're good to go. Now, you don't have to retrofit these. You don't have to do anything. Just keep on Zero Limit Break and level 70, you're good to go. Now, I do have another set at max limit break and low 1, or about to be 120, and I have Downs somewhere right here. That's 120 right here. Or Cassin. You can do these if you want to. If you really want to push like cheap farming for like events or whatever, like at D3, you can make high retrofits, limit break or whatever. But the reason why I keep one of each set is because even though this is a lot tankier, because retrofit and low 120, they cost 7 oil, which is really cheap still, but they cost 7 oil. Whereas Zero Limit Break, if they're a common destroyer, most of the time they cost 1 oil. So 1 oil saves up a lot. If you're farming like a lot or whatever, for whatever reason, they're very good. So if you really want to get really into farming, I say have one of each set at Zero Limit Break level 70, maybe 2 if you really want to push farming hardcore, and maybe have another set at max retrofit. Also, this also helps out for like mementos if you want to do like retrofit for collections, and this thing right here, if I can find where they are, these things right here, if you want to do those, have another set as well. Now, the other ship is basically a zombie as well, but it's a little bit more expensive. It's called Phoenix. Now, Phoenix, I kept one at 70. I kept one at 120. I don't use the level 71 as much anymore. There's probably still usage for them, but honestly, nowadays with gear being so good, Cassin and Downs does more than enough. And Cassin and Downs, they cost 2 oil for both of them if you want to use both together, meaning the damage is going to be better and the sustain is going to be better as well. And Phoenix just costs 3. So I don't use her as much anymore. I use the 120 Phoenix a lot more, and the 120 Phoenix I'll talk about later on, or I'll talk about it right now. The reason why you want to use this one is because she's really good when it comes to 1-1 sorting. So if you want to farm like event maps at D3, she's a very good ship to use. And I'll get more into detail with that later, but she's a good ship to take to max limit break 120. She's okay at Zero Limit Break level 70 though. You don't have to, but if you want to make 2, go for it. I would recommend just taking 1 to 120 though. Don't bother with the level 71. So those are the cheap vanguards I recommend people use. There's a lot more other ones, but I won't get into them. Well, there's more, but I'll get into that much later on. Let's get into the backlines. So backlines, Some people use like levels 0 Lone Break Langley or whatever, Ranger as well. I don't use them as much. I mean, there's some usage for them, like event farming and whatnot, but I just use Erebus and call it a day. It's like 1 oil more or something. So you can use Langley, you can use Ranger if you want. Make those at level 70, 0 Lone Break. Also make another set for more cheaper stuff later on, but I'll talk about that later maybe, because actually I'll talk about it right now. My Ranger, I use Ranger for autoing this daily right here, the aviation one. I can't do it right now, but I usually just use Ranger for that one. It's cheap, gets it out of the way, gets the job done really fast. Now, what I do use most of the time though when it comes to cheap backline farming is I use Erebus. Erebus is a monitor, 0 Lone Break, level 70. If I can find her, I'm blind. Here she is. Really good. Now, how I equip her is nothing too fancy. Also, I equip Phoenix now. I'll show you guys later though. I equip Phoenix Erebus with just this, a secondary gun. It can be whatever, just basically whatever gives a lot of firepower. I think I have more baguette guns, so do that. Anti-air can be whatever. If you want min max, you can give her this right here. It gives 15 firepower. Otherwise, anti-air doesn't matter too much. And for auxiliaries, just a repair toolkit and a fire extinguisher is what I use, because if you're cheap farming, most of the time they're going to be taking like heavy backline damage or whatever. So the fire extinguisher will help mitigate a lot of the damage and the burn. And then you have a flat health pool right here. Simple. That's how I equip Erebus. And I use Erebus with 2 cast and down. So basically a setup would look like this. A setup would look like this. If I can find, and I'm not blind, but I'm blind, so here we go. Okay, so a setup I would normally do is like this. If I want to farm like A or B for an event, I would do something like this. B may be a little bit harder for Erebus, but if you want to get like super like min maxy about it, you can make a 0 Limit Break battleship. I think I have someone right here. Where is she? If I can find one, like Rodney or something. But I don't care too much about it. I think this is fine. If you really get to that point where Erebus is not as good anymore for a backline, just slot in like a regular battleship and get some EXP for that. For example, like, I don't know, just toss in like a Nevada or something, or whatever you want to level up, right? That's basically it. So I usually do Erebus. You can make a Rodney if you want, or Nelson, 0 Limit backline. I don't use it too much nowadays though, but if you want to, you can do that. That's also an option as well. But those are the ships I generally use for farming: Erebus, Rodney or Nelson, and then two zombies and Phoenix. So cast and downs, Phoenix, Erebus, or Terror. Terror works well, but Erebus has more luck, so I use Erebus. Rodney or Nelson. I think Nelson has more stats though, but that's generally it. Now, let's get into the topic of event farming, because most of the time, if you're not cheap farming, you're just doing like regular 1-1 setups or whatever farming for ships to get to 120, right? Most of the time, if you're not doing cheap stuff, you're out there for EXP. Now, when it comes to D3 farming, some people do that as well. They use like 1-2, 1-1 setups for boss fleets and whatnot for D3, or for mob fleets for D3. Now you can if you want to, but some requirements are just really annoying to the point where I'm paying like 40 oil per D3 run, and it's not efficient whatsoever. So there's 2 setups I recommend you guys do for those kind of events. Now I'll probably make another video about this later on when there's an actual event, but there's 2 setups I would generally recommend. If the requirements are there, I would recommend doing these kind of setups. So there's 2 ways to do mob fleets when it comes to D3. Now, there's going to be requirements and whatnot, but I'll explain about that later. When it comes to event D3 farming, there's 2 setups I highly recommend. I'll show you guys over here. The first one is Saratoga and Phoenix. I use this setup for basically almost every single event I can think of, to the point where, if you guys haven't seen already, these 2 girls right here are 3 mil EXP already. I've used them so many times to the point where they're overcapped. They should be like level 130 by now. I farm with them so much. It's disgusting. Uh, but this is the fleet I use for D3 a lot. It's really, really cheap. It is 21 oil. It's very, very cheap. I use this for basically everything. Saratoga is an amazing, amazing backliner. Really, really cheap. Really, really strong as well. How I equip her is basically like this. I'll use some kind of PvE plane. I use Corsairs for this case. Sea Fangs and stuff works as well. And 2 dive bombers, Hell Divers in particular. And for auxiliaries, I use something like I don't want to take gear from these girls. Oh well, I'm gonna take from Perseus. I use 1 steam catapult, and I use 1 fire extinguisher. This is generally how I equip my Saratoga for when it comes to event farming. Really, really cheap. And for Phoenix, I use a Neptune's gun, but if you don't have Neptune's gun, you can use that one gun I recommended in one of my previous videos, the Twin 150s. Equip that. Equip some sort of firepower auxiliary gun. I'm using the 127s right now. Some sort of anti-air. You just toss whatever, like Roombas or something. It doesn't matter what anti-air. Just give her like something that's pretty good. And auxiliaries, for the most part, for the longest time, I did the generic setup of, if I can find Erebus, the repair toolkit and fire extinguisher. This setup usually works for like a lot of places. I've tested this other one as well, where I go repair toolkit and like one of these reports or whatever. If you guys don't know what reports are, they come from like special events that you can grab these. I've tried this setup as well because it has 6% reduced siren damage. It's about the same, honestly. You get more firepower from this, but it's negligible because Phoenix doesn't do that much damage. Your Saratoga does most of the damage when it comes to mob clearing. So either or works perfectly fine. Fire suppressor is a lot more accessible compared to these nowadays, so let's go with the fire extinguisher, and that's generally how I equip Phoenix. So that is the first setup when it comes to like D3 farming. The second setup is really, really simple as well. This is cheaper and probably a bit better, I say. I think a lot of people use this setup because it's like one of the most common ones. So the other setup is use either Laffy with Shoho or Z23 with Shoho, if I can find Z23. So these are really, really good because this setup is about your Vanguard like Laffy or Z23 doing all the damage, and the backline Shoho supports it. Now there's gonna be suicide bombers and whatnot when it comes to D3 farming, but there's not that many. Your Vanguard would have so much wave clear that it doesn't even matter at that point. Like there's another setup that you can do as well, but I'm not talking about those ships specifically. I'm talking about free to play ships. So this setup is very, very good. So Z23 or Laffy, this setup costs 19 oil. It is very, very cheap. 19 oil versus the, what was it? I think it was 21 with Saratoga. I personally like the Saratoga one though. But if you have 120 ships for D3 farming, this is also a very, very good setup. This is how I equip my Shoho. I would drop one of these though for steam catapults if you're having trouble surviving. And Z23, how you would gear her is probably the same as Laffy. Well, I'm going to show Laffy because I have Laffy already geared up for this. 1 second. As I replace. Pretty much like this. It doesn't matter too much. Just the main gun and the torpedoes matter the most. Then you have anti-air, and then you have your 2 sustain thingamabobs, like auxiliaries. So this will get you through most of the maps. D3 farming in particular, very, very cheap. 19 oil, very, very good for farming with. So as of right now, those are only free to play ships. I highly recommend people have invested into those particular levels. Some 120 and some at 0 limit break or whatever, because you want cheap farm with. So that's pretty much it. The other ones I'm not going to talk about because they're not free to play ships. They're gacha events. So yeah. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Any questions, let me know. Thank you guys for watching.